Good morning, members. Welcome to March 31st. Oh, it's April 1st. Never mind. April 1st, the 31st day of the Wyoming Legislature's 66th General Session. Let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Convening roll for the 31st day, Thursday, April 1st, 2021. Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
Present.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Grego. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flittner. Fortner.
Here.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dam. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Ian. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Blackburn. Greer. Excused. Martinez. Excused. 58 present, 2 excused.
Thank you very much. So members, let's join Pastor Zach from Grace United Methodist for a blessing.
This week in the Christian tradition, we celebrate Holy Week, the week that leads us from Palm Sunday to Easter. There's a lot that happens this week, and today is the day in which we celebrate Jesus sitting with the disciples and having communion, but also the time in which Jesus takes off his robe and he washes the disciples' feet, showing us what it means to be a humble servant. Yesterday, my 7-year-old daughter, who's right up there, she asked me, she's like, "Daddy, what are you doing?" I said, "I don't know." But I had the opportunity to go and be in front of these fine folks and pray, offer a little bit of grace and peace. She said, "Can you do something for me?" I said, "Sure, I'll try." So I'm going to have you do something and humor me for a moment. Would you put your right arm out? Put your right arm in. Just put your right arm out. Shake it all about. Do the hokey pokey. Turn yourself around. Ready? That's what it's all about. See, when Jesus takes his robe off and he humbles himself and he washes the disciples' feet, he only serves as humble as he is. Let that be a reminder for us, all of us, wherever we go, whatever we do today, tomorrow, and the next, that we can only serve as humble as we lead. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, what a beautiful day to go and be outside and hear birds singing and be in this space. May we be present. May we take off our robes and may we wash the feet of the people before us. May we lead humbly in your grace and your peace and your love. We pray these things in your name. Amen. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pastor, for that. So you have family up there. Would your family all stand up so we can welcome them to the house? Welcome. Well, we're so pleased you're here with us. And now you know what Dad does. 10 o'clock every morning. He helps to get the state of Wyoming, the House of Representatives, started off to a great start. So we're so glad you're with us here today. Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate you. Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of March 31st, 2021 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Haroldson and Provenza.
Thank you. I'm going to appoint a joint conference committee on Senate File 87. This will be Joint Conference Committee number 1. It will be Duncan, Chairman, Brown, Olson. Messages from the Senate.
Message 373. Mr. Speaker, the Senate adopted the Committee of the Whole report, failing the bill listed below by the vote indicated. House Bill 67, geothermal and hydro-related energy review. Ayes 13, noes 16, excused 1. This bill has been indefinitely postponed. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Message 374. Mr. Speaker, the Senate appointed Senate conferees to meet with alike Committee number 1 from the House on amendments to House Bill 150. The Senate conferees are Senator Perkins, Chairman, Senator Guru, Senator Steinmetz, and sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Reports from standing committees.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee number 2 appropriations, to whom was referred Senate File 122 engrossed, Wyoming Agriculture Authority, respectfully reports same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kenner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Walters. Representative Stith excused. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
Thank you. So members, we're at that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. First enrolled act is number 50, House Bill 10, Enrolled Act 55.
House Enrolled Act 55, being original House Bill 10. An act relating to the emergency expenses of government related to business relief, authorizing an emergency governmental program related to economic development and business relief as specified, providing for an appropriation, providing a sunset date for the created program, providing rulemaking authority, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 55, being original House Bill 10. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 56.
House Enrolled Act 56, being original House Bill 38. An act relating to public health and safety, amending provisions relating to community health services, specifying and prioritizing the categories of persons to receive state-funded mental illness and substance use disorder services, providing definitions, making conforming amendments, repealing obsolete provisions, requiring reports, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 56, being original House Bill 38. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 57.
House Enrolled Act 57, being original House Bill 73. An act relating to vital records, specifying how parents are listed on a birth certificate upon delivery by a surrogate, providing definitions, making conforming amendments, specifying applicability, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 57, being original House Bill 73. I have so signed. Congratulations, Chairman Greer. Next Enrolled Act is 58.
House Enrolled Act 58, being original House Bill 95. An act relating to game and fish, authorizing rules to provide for the collection of road-killed animals, providing restrictions, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act number 58, being original House Bill 95. Congratulations, Chairman Zwanitzer. Next Enrolled Act 59.
House Enrolled Act 59, being original House Bill 102. An act relating to the Wyoming Preference Act of 1971, amending requirements for Wyoming laborers on public works, revising certification requirements for use of non-resident laborers, making conforming amendments, specifying applicability, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 59, being original House Bill 102. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 60.
House Enrolled Act 60, being original House Bill 41. An act relating to intrastate crowdfunding, increasing the dollar amount qualifying for an exemption from securities regulation, removing the dollar limit on funding received from non-accredited investors, removing and amending reporting requirements, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 60, being original House Bill 41. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 61.
House Enrolled Act 61, being original House Bill 43. An act relating to digital assets, amending the definition of digital assets, amending provisions relating to the nature of digital assets under commercial law, amending security interest provisions relating to digital assets, specifying the application of commercial law to specific types of digital assets, clarifying provisions relating to custody of digital assets by banks, establishing that certain digital assets provisions are consumer protection statutes for commercial law purposes, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 61, being original House Bill 43. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 62.
House Enrolled Act 62, being original House Bill 179. An act relating to taxation and revenue, removing the requirement that a proposition for a municipal sales and use tax be voted on only at the general election, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 62, being original House Bill 179. Congratulations, Chairman Zwanitzer. Next Enrolled Act is 63.
House Enrolled Act 63, being original House Bill 195. An act relating to the Medical Review Panel, repealing the Wyoming Medical Review Panel Act of 2005, ceasing review of new malpractice claims by the Medical Review Panel, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 63, being original House Bill 195. Congratulations, Chairman Olson. Next Enrolled Act 64.
House Enrolled Act 64, being original House Bill 197. An act relating to the emergency expenses of government related to broadband internet access, authorizing the use of federal funds related to the Connect Wyoming program for broadband development in Wyoming, defining terms related to funding the program, providing for an appropriation, providing rulemaking authority, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 64, being original House Bill 197. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Newsom. Newsom. Next Enrolled Act 65.
House Enrolled Act 65 being original House Bill 198, an act relating to the University of Wyoming, clarifying the authority of the university over water, making conforming amendments, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act 65, being original House Bill 198. I have so signed. Congratulations, Chairman Nicholas. All right, members, with that order of business of bills on second reading, the first bill for our consideration is Senate File 15.
Senate File 15, sponsored by corporations, temporary licensing and permitting authority to, an act relating to professions and occupations.
Senate File 15 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next, Senate File 28.
Senate File 28, sponsored by corporations, motor vehicles, security interest perfection, an act relating to motor vehicles.
Senate File 28 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next, Senate File 34.
Senate File 34, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz, born alive infant means of care, an act relating to public health and safety.
Senate File 34 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. The next, Senate File 130.
Senate File 130, sponsored by Senator Driscoll, charter schools, an act relating to charter schools.
Senate File 130 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next, Senate File 157.
Senate File 157, sponsored by Senator Beitman, property rights, limitation on local authority, an act relating to cities and towns.
Senate File 157 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I would move the consent list consisting of the following Senate files: 78, 114, 118, 126, 139, and Senate Joint Resolution 3.
Right, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, 118 does have an amendment, so we'll strike that from the list. Nope, another one had an amendment come up. So members, does any member want either 78, 114, 126, 139, or Senate Joint 3 removed from the list? Any member like any of those bills removed from the list? So to confirm, our consent list is Senate File 78, 114, 126, 139, and Senate Joint 3. No one needs anything removed. All right, having been read three separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the House? Chief Clerk, please call the roll. Oh, maybe we'll read them before we roll call.
Senate File 78, sponsored by Senator Pappas, real estate appraisers, continuing education, and an act relating to real estate appraisers being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 114, sponsored by Senator Boner, State land leases, an act relating to state lands being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 126, sponsored by Senator Cooper, real estate subdivisions, easements, requirements, an act relating to planning and zoning being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 139, sponsored by Senate Appropriations, community-based in-home services program, an act relating to community-based in-home services being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate Joint Resolution 3, sponsored by Senator Cooper, federal suspension and orders on oil and gas production, a joint resolution requesting Congress and the federal government to reserve federal orders and actions that inhibit the safe development of oil and gas in Wyoming and that negatively and disproportionately impact Wyoming citizens and industries, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Now, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the House? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Roll call on the consent list. Andrew? Baker? Banks? Bear? Blackburn? Brown? Burkhart? Burt?
Aye.
Clausen? Clifford? Connolly? Crago? Duncan? Eklund? Air? Flitner? Fortner?
Aye.
Gray? Greer? Hallinan? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hunt? Jennings? Kenner? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson Dan? McGuire? Martinez? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Paxton? Provenza? Roscoe? Schwartz? Sherwood? Simpson? Summers? Stith? Stivar? Sweeney? Walters? Washit? Western? Wharf? Williams? Wilson? Winter? Yin? Zawanitzer? Mr. Speaker, we have 60 aye. As for Senate File 78, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Fortner, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 no. As for Senate File 114, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 60 aye. As for Senate File 126, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 60 aye. As for Senate File 139, are there any changes? Provenza, aye to no. Connolly, aye to no. Andrew, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 58 aye. I'm going to have to change this because Andrew was a no and it's not showing. So it's 57 aye, 3 no. And as for Senate Joint Resolution 3, are there any changes? Provenza, aye to no. Connolly, aye to no. Clifford, aye to no. Yin, aye to no. Schwartz, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 55 aye, 5 no.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate Files 78, 114, 126, 139, and Senate Joint Resolution 3 have passed the House. All right, so members, sometimes the voting system sticks and someone's vote doesn't get recorded correctly. So the chief clerk's going to correct Representative Andrews' vote on that last one of those previous bills, Senate File 139. So we're at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 4.
Senate File 4, sponsored by Transportation, Airport Districts, an act relating to aeronautics, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Senate File 4 does have an amendment, and members, the Representative Andrew has visited with me about what he's going to do with this amendment, and I think it's perfectly in order. So, Representative Andrew, on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 4 and ask for your favorable consideration, and I will withdraw it at the appropriate time. I'm concerned that this bill may have unintentionally created an extremely regressive way to create revenue for airports. Let's think about the problem that I was hoping to solve in terms of 2 individuals. One is an elderly woman in West Laramie who lives off nothing but the little she receives from her reverse mortgage payment and the generosity of the local food bank. The other is a very rich pharmaceutical mogul from Dallas who enjoys the football games that take place at the university over the hill. His personal team of pilots flies him in his luxury jet to every home game. Senate File 4 would allow for the voters to impose an extra tax on the woman for the purpose of paying for the airport for the millionaire who will pay nothing more. On and against the bill, I withdraw my amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So members, what actually, and I thought maybe I didn't have as good enough understanding with the member. So the amendment is withdrawn. Was what he was trying to do is actually not allowed by law with this amendment, but he wanted to. I thought he was going to say that, but he said a little more than that. So my apologies. But anyway. All right, so, but it was certainly in order for him to bring his amendment, withdraw it, and explain why. Anyway, we'll go from there. So,
Mr.
members.
Speaker, point of order.
Point of order, yes, Representative.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it typically the tradition of the House that if they've moved the amendment that we dispense with the debate? At least we have that opportunity.
Yeah, so his motion was to both move it and withdraw it with a brief explanation.
Okay.
And to be fair, Representative Gray, I gave him the option of trying to get a delete the enacting clause, but time was short, and we know how those come out kind of right at the last minute sometimes. So I said, I'll give you that bit of a moment. So otherwise, we'd be out of order or standing at ease waiting for a delete the enacting clause. So I thank the representative. All right, members, Senate File 4, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
No.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stibar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Blackburn, no to aye. Confirm your vote, please. Blackburn, no. Heiner, no to aye. Flitner, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 30 aye, 30 no.
Senate File 4, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 4 has failed to pass the House. Next Senate File 66.
Senate File 66, sponsored by Senator Cooper. Slayer rule applied to joint ownership. An act relating to wills, decedents' estates, and probate code being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Senate File 66 has an amendment. Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 66 and ask for your favorable consideration. I, along with the good chairman of Judiciary, are bringing this amendment to address a couple issues in the bill. First, as we debated this bill over the last few days, we realized that some of the language contained in the bill could be a little more clear. Specifically, I think we decided that the standing committee amendment was a little confusing even for us lawyers. So we worked on some language that made it very clear that upon the death of the person being killed, any joint tenancies are severed and both the killer and the decedent would keep their respective shares of the property. This part of the amendment is contained on lines 28 through 35. And as you will see, this amendment also deletes the standing committee amendment. The other problem that we tried to address in this amendment is the fact that the bill, as written, does not allow the killer or the slayer to inherit, but it does not prevent the slayer or the killer from actually being a trustee or a fiduciary or some other representative for the deceased person. And so we added some language in the amendment to take care of that problem as well. And then the final substantive change at the bottom of the amendment is we included a definition for killer so that we could get rid of some of the circular language in the statute. And that pretty much explains it. And with that, I would stand for questions if there are any If not, I would call for the question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, we're voting, or any discussion on third reading amendment number 1? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, members, we're voting on third reading amendment number 1, Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. Senate File 66, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
Aye.
Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner,
Aye.
Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, McGuire, Martinez, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stibar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 no.
Senate File 66, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 66 has passed the House. Next, Senate File 75.
Senate File 75, sponsored by Senator Landon, protective orders amendments, an act relating to the courts being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
There are no amendments, so Senate File 75, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
Aye.
Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner,
No.
Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, McGuire, Martinez, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stibar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Hallinan, aye to no. Burkhart, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 41 aye, 19 no.
Senate File 75, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the House, Senate File 75 has passed the House. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rule 7-3, I'd like to lay back Senate File 85 one day until tomorrow.
Without objection, Senate File 85 is laid back one day. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that we lay back Senate File 118 one day pursuant, I believe, to Rule 7-2. 7-3, thank you.
118 is without objection laid back one day. Both of those bills had amendments in drafting, and they weren't going to get out here in a timely manner. So if you want to object, we can go through that process, but as a courtesy, we generally give each other time to get amendments up. Representative Larson. Look, Dan.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'd like to move reconsideration of the vote on Senate File 4.
So Representative Larson, were you on the prevailing side? Or there is no prevailing side. No, the noes are the prevailing side. The noes are the prevailing side because the bill did not pass. So it needs to be somebody from that was a no on the vote. And you were a no on that vote? And are you asking for immediate reconsideration, or are you asking to be reconsidered the following day?
Mr. Speaker, I would like it immediately.
Immediate reconsideration, say. So what we'll do, members, just as an order of business to give the clerk time, is we will take up we're going to take up Senate File 111 because that's the last one left on our third reading, and then we'll do the reconsideration if that's acceptable. Because the clerk, it'll take a few minutes to do the clerk's work anyway on the roll call. So we'll do that. So for the members, just to get back where we are, Senate File 85 and 118 have been laid back one day. Next Senate file is 111. And while we're doing this work, Chief Clerk will get set up for reconsideration on Senate File 4. All right, next bill, Senate File 111.
Senate File 111, sponsored by Senator Anderson. School of Energy Resource Budget Submittal, an act relating to University of Wyoming, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
All right, we do have an amendment. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 111 and ask for your favorable consideration, ladies and gentlemen. So what this does, it just modifies the process a little bit for the School of Energy Resources. And under this amendment, what they would do is review, they still create their budget, then they submit the budget to the University Board of Trustees for comment. And then after that, then they forward it on to the governor with the comments of the trustees attached to it. So basically, the School of Energy Resources still controls their budget. They develop it, but this just gives the opportunity of the trustees to comment on it in written form when it's submitted to the chief executive. So I ask for your favorable consideration.
All right, any discussion on the amendment? Chairman Zwanitzer on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just say it seems odd that it still has to be approved by a council made up of appointees without Senate confirmation. And the council is, I think, 6 energy current or retired executives and 2 legislators, and they still have to approve it, but the Board of Trustees just gets to make comments. We don't do this for any other school. It's better, but I don't think it makes the bill good enough to pass the body, but it just seems like a weird way of doing business for one school at the university.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, members, we are voting on third reading amendment number 1, Senate File 111. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The amendment is not adopted. All those in favor, please rise. All those opposed, please rise and stay as still as you can. The amendment has failed 26 to 32. Senate File 111, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
Aye.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
Aye.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stybar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Roscoe, aye to no. Eklund, aye to no. Larson Dan, no to aye. Martinez, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 38 aye, 22 no.
Senate File 111, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 111 has passed the House. So it'll be just a moment. The Chief Clerk will get the roll call system set up for our reconsideration. This will be reconsideration members of Senate File 4. It was properly noticed we're within the last 10 days of the session, so it can be done on the same day at any time during that day by rule. The first vote will be on whether you are interested in reconsideration. If you vote yes, then we're going to vote a second time on the bill. If you vote no, you're voting that the bill stays with its last recorded vote. So, Chief, you ready? So, and it's not debatable, and neither actually questions are debatable. So with that order of business of reconsideration of bills, the motion has been made, it is not debatable. Chief Clerk, please call the roll. Again, members, you're voting on whether you are interested in reconsidering the vote. An aye means you're going to vote on the bill again. A no means you do not want to vote on the bill again. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
No.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Reconsideration, Senate File 4. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Swanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 26 aye, 34 no.
So the motion to reconsider is not adopted. Therefore, the final action on Senate File 4 has not passed the House. And just so we're clear, another reconsideration vote is not in order. Not in order. At least on the same day. I'd have to look at the rules for the rest, but. All right, Chief Clerk. All right, members, we're on that order of business of concurrences to Senate amendments of the House bills. The first message for our consideration is message number 362 on House Bill 17, Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move concurrence on message 362 on House Bill 17, range management at military training areas. And I would ask for your aye vote. What the body down the hall did was corrected some English. I'm getting the feeling sometimes that they were all closet English professors. After appropriations, they inserted providing for an appropriation. That's just wording in the catch title, page 1, line 6. And that's all they did. And I would ask for your aye vote.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, members, we are voting on a motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 17. A majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
No.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
Aye.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Harshman. Excused. Harshman. Aye. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Hallinan, no to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 45 aye, 15 no.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 17. The next message for our consideration is message 369 on House Bill 207, Chairman Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move concurrence, message 369, House Bill 207. After visiting with the sponsor of the bill, we'll request an aye vote on concurrence. I'll explain what the amendments were. We had a reporting of the status of any litigation to come back to minerals twice a year rather than once a year. The sponsor of the bill, the distinguished gentleman from District 4, assures me that he'll be checking in with the governor's office monthly on this. So that provision is probably just fine. Really for the body and maybe our members of the Appropriations Committee is the appropriation was moved from $500,000 for this litigation fund back to 1.2 million, which was the original amount in the bill as presented to House Minerals and then later slightly adjusted by our Appropriations Committee. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I will ask for an aye vote on concurrence on House Bill 207. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members on message 369? Messages 369, Chairman Zawanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just making sure we had a policy in this body and our Appropriations Committee, and we agreed to it. And we're not going to go back and even question $700,000 without, we're just going to roll. I mean, not to be rude to the body, but historically, $700,000 is a lot of money right now. And I thought we made a policy decision and it just seems odd. Maybe I've been here too long that we just go along with it. So any other discussion would be appreciated, but I'd ask you to at least go to a conference committee and make sure we need that amount of money and come back and a handout or something to say, for sure, we need this.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also agree that we probably ought to meet with our distinguished gentleman down the hall and revisit that conversation on the amount. The consideration that we had for was that it was certainly a worthy endeavor, but felt that for the witnesses and the people that would probably be required during this part of our biennium, that the 500,000 was appropriate and fair, and that we could consider that again as we move forward in our next standard budget. So I think maybe we ought to revisit this over and would ask for a no vote.
Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd urge an aye vote on concurrence. Keep in mind here, this is about keeping coal-fired power plants in other states open, and also the exporting of our coal. This pays for itself if we're successful in a matter of months because of the severance taxation. So, I mean, this is clear violations of federal law that other states have been committing, and we need to fight for the citizens of the state of Wyoming in these jobs. So I urge an aye vote on concurrence. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Haroldson, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I do as well ask for an aye vote on this concurrence. And as I sat through that appropriations committee meeting, and they made the amendment to bring this back up to 1.2, one of the things they said is we don't want it to be a situation where we get into the middle of this lawsuit and find that we need more money. And so we would like to make sure that it is adequate to take care of the situation at hand and move this forward. You guys, in a way, this is a chess move. We're able to bring in a relatively, I mean, I know it's 1.2 million is a lot of money. It really is. But when you consider what we get off of our valorum taxes and what we get off of these industries, it's a pretty small amount for what the return on investment could be very large if this goes in our favor. And do we know that? No, we don't. But at the same time, I know that if we don't try, we've already lost. So I think it's time that we concur with this and move forward with it. Thank you.
Any other member? First time. First time, we're on message 369. First time. First time. Second time. Representative Larson Lloyd.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that the argument here is whether it's a worthy endeavor or not. I think I fully support it. But the idea that we don't want to get into the middle of a situation and find we don't have enough money is that the governor's office does indeed in their budget has some contingency money in a couple of places that could certainly get us through what would be required this year. I just think that as we've talked about being careful in what we do, that maybe we ought to go back again and say, do we need the full 1.2 and see what they have to say. So again, a no vote, please.
Any other members? Second time, Chairman Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, clearly for this body to consider at this point in time, it's a policy argument. Do we reserve a $500,000 or the $1.2 million? Okay, that's the policy decision for right now. I'm in favor of the 1.2. Some of the comments that were made, though, I need to comment on. And while I haven't been here as long as some other members, the simple fact of the matter is that our appropriations committee does their job when they review these bills and they make their decision. It comes in here and then we'll vote on it, goes to the other side. They make a decision. They probably have a chance to discuss it some more, probably some more information. It comes back. It's not rolling by agreeing to changes made by the other side. It's just not. Okay. It's just taking and listening to the discussion with this. You know, the other thing too, we have to consider, and many of you have been in that situation. First bill for a new member. Members worried about getting the bill through. Sit in front of the appropriations committee. They're an intimidating lot. They really are. And hey, my bill gets through. It's got some money in it. I'm happy. I'm not going to argue about the money right now. So keep all that in mind. And I just would encourage an aye vote. Thank you.
So members, Representative Gray was coming to the mic and I didn't notice him before the mover went, so I'm going to allow Representative Gray to close this up. So I apologize, Representative Gray. You want to close this out? This is members for their second time,
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
and I apologize.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Representative Gray.
Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, we got to keep in mind, this is not like necessarily will be spent. I mean, it has to be approved by the governor's office, and you keep in mind the history on the export issue. I mean, they created an account 2014 or 2013 on that, and the governor did nothing on it for 6 years across multiple administrations. And until we had a bill that said if they're not going to do it, the legislature is going to do it, which was ultimately vetoed, but that pressure ultimately got them to do something on the export issue. So, I mean, it's a process. I'm not sure anything, frankly, from the testimony on this bill, I'm not sure they move forward with anything off this. It might sit there, but we need to allow them that opportunity to do this. And then if they're not, and we think it's justifiable, then we can say, hey, we would prefer it to come from them. It probably in terms of administration is better to come from them. But if they have been given that opportunity and aren't able to do it, then we can do it if it is appropriate. But we need to let that play that out. If there's not enough money there, then it just creates a dynamic where they come to minerals and say, well, there isn't enough to initiate it anyway, so we're not going to do it. And we're not letting the full process play out really, where we're providing that opportunity for the governor's office. We have this weird statutory construction. We're one of the few states that has an appointed attorney general, which we've talked about many times, but we have to give them that opportunity because of the structure of our statutes to initiate it probably on their own. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. And I can tell you, I have the scars. They are very careful in initiating these. Okay. It doesn't just happen with the snap of a finger. So, and the testimony, I think, on this bore this out. So let's let this play out, and we'll have testimony here in the Minerals Committee on it, and see what they're thinking. But I'd urge an aye on concurrence. Thank you.
All right, members, we're voting on message 369, House Bill 207, to concur with the Senate amendments. A majority of the members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
Aye.
Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner,
Aye.
Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, McGuire, Martinez, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stibar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Sweeney, aye to no. Further changes?
Chief Clerk.
Burt, aye to no, correct?
Correct.
Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 36 aye, 24 no.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 207. The next message for our consideration is message 370 on House Bill 229. Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker, I move message 370 on House Bill 229. This is the Livestock Identification Choice Act. I have visited with the bill sponsor. The changes by the Senate do not change the bill significantly, and I would urge an aye vote on the bill. They word crafted a few things here and there. And probably the significant change that I can see is it changed it from July 1, 2021 to effective immediately. And so again, I'd urge an aye vote.
Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, this, when we brought it back, they just did some refining changes to this. There's a little bit clearer definition on traceability, all very good changes, and it passed unanimously. So I would encourage an aye on this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other member? Any other member? Any other member? Members, we're voting on concurrence. The Senate amendments to House Bill 229. A majority of the members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
Aye.
Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner,
Aye.
Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, McGuire, Martinez, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker.
Aye.
Closing vote. Are there any changes? Larson Lloyd, no to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 no.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 229. Members, with that order of business of consideration of joint conference committee reports. The first report for your consideration is Joint Conference Committee number 1 on House Bill 50. 150, House Bill 150. Chairman Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move Joint House Conference Committee Report number 1 to House Bill 150. Folks, if you'll recall yesterday, we talked about some amendments that the Senate had made to House Bill 150, putting a little more sideboards on when agencies or the governor's office accept some federal dollars to make sure that we're not further requiring the state some requirements on our general fund dollars, and making sure that the governor is aware of all of those before he accepts them, and then also making sure that the legislature is involved when it gets up to the thresholds that we established. And I mentioned to you that there's some technical corrections that needed to be made. When we visited with the LSO office, we met and suggested that we have a conference committee to do that. You agreed with that. In our non-concurrence yesterday, we met with the like body from the body on the other side, and we we corrected a date to July 1, 2021. We inserted a Roman 13, added a new subsection Q and R, meaning exactly that just the grammatical stuff. And we've done that in 2 or 3 places that they had missed when they drafted the amendments. And so, Mr. Chairman, I had encouraged the body to adopt the report.
Thank you. Any discussion on the report? Any discussion on the report? Seeing none. We are voting on Joint Conference Committee number 1, report to House Bill 150. A majority of the members is elected is required to adopt the report. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt.
No.
Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner.
Aye.
Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stibar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Orf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 no.
By your vote, you have adopted Joint Conference Committee number 1 report on House Bill 150. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the Majority Floor Leader's motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Representative Brown.
The committee of the whole will come to order. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And so just so the body kind of understands where we're at, because I have had a few questions this morning. So with the bills we hear on committee of the whole today, we will go tomorrow and have second reading, and then we'll have a motion for suspension of the rules to hear third reading. So if you intend to amend these bills going forward, remember your second and third's both going to be tomorrow, if you guys agree to that. Otherwise, we got to go to next week on third reading. We're hoping to get our third reading caught up tomorrow. So if you got amendments, try to get them in tomorrow for second or third reading, and third reading, I should say. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker.
So members, Majority Floor Leader's lined up what would be ideal. We certainly still have a day planned for next 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday. So if we have to do third reading, but I'm just going to be caution you that we have members that have already departed. More members are departing tomorrow. And there'll be limited potentially number of members here on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. We'll still have a quorum to do business, but I would just caution you on laying bills back for consideration on third reading next week, because they may not get the full hearing that you would like them to get. If they are your bills, I would be cautious of that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's get to work. The first file for our consideration is Senate File 38. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
Senate File 38, sponsored by Blockchain, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations and Act Relating to Corporations. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 38 engrossed, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Bear, Burkhart, Duncan, Air, Gray, Greer, Heiner, Sherwood, Western. Representative Greer, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Greer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises report that to do so, the recommendation Senate File 38 do pass. And for the explanation of the bill, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to the distinguished gentleman from House District 51.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so I know this title seems kind of weird and nebulous and what the heck is this thing? But really it's pretty straightforward in what it does. So as we all know, any of us can go down to the Secretary of State's office and file an LLC. You can do a member managed LLC, and there's a couple other options that you can incorporate with. So this is a member managed LLC. What it does is this: if let's say you own an apartment complex or a hotel or whatever, you file that in an LLC, and let's say you have partners. What you do is you go to an attorney and you have them draft an operating agreement that kind of outlines your business relationship with your partner. Ownership shares, profit sharing, cost sharing, all that kind of stuff. And this is very standard operating procedure. We've been doing this in Wyoming for 50 years, more even. What this bill is basically that exact same thing. It is an operating agreement in an algorithm form. So when you have an operating agreement, the way we normally do it, your attorney drafts it, you review it, all the partners sign it, you have a copy, your partners have a copy, and your attorney has a copy of the LLC. Instead of having it being a paper copy that you put away in a filing cabinet somewhere, it's a digital copy that's written into an algorithm. And so that's all it really is. And so it tells these companies that want to have what we call these smart contracts, digital contracts, just says, hey, you're more than welcome to incorporate and use this filing for limited liability protection in Wyoming, as long as you go through the proper protocols that anybody else would to file an LLC. So that's in essence what it is. So why is it important? I mean, why is it here? How is this beneficial? Now that we are kind of entering the 21st century, the digital age, all that kind of stuff, some of the folks that operate in that digital space with cryptocurrencies, digital assets, all that kind of stuff, this is kind of the next generation ability for them to incorporate their companies and have these operating agreements amongst the owners, and kind of that next generation. It makes it much more efficient and effective. So for example, right now, let's say one of your partners is in breach of contract. Obviously, the only way you'd know is if your attorney calls you up or something is awry in the business that would suggest otherwise. But someone still has to detect it, right? Somebody along the way, whether it's your attorney, one of the other partners, an employee of your company, the bank, someone has to tip you off. Where with a smart contract, or these DAOs, with these algorithmic operating agreements, it automatically tells you, hey, partner X, they're not fulfilling their contractual obligations, or they're in violation of this operating agreement. So that's just one example of the many benefits that these things can have for some of these companies that operate into the digital asset space. So that's kind of a rundown of what the bill is and why it's beneficial. So I would happily stand for any questions. Thank you.
Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, just a question for the representative from District 51. So it sounds like this would, the novel feature of this would be that the management of the company itself could be governed by a smart contract run through an algorithm. And so in the event that there are human individual members potentially of this, but the they're not calling up to make individual decisions. Rather, you've got this algorithm that's on autopilot, so to speak, or responding to the world as it changes. So do the members have any responsibility if the algorithm is set up as essentially a kind of scheme to defraud people, then who's responsible for that? Is it just, gosh, we made a mistake in our algorithm? How does the liability work of the members? What's the relief for the people who might say be defrauded in the event that you sort of just essentially set this up as a scam?
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the question from the good gentleman from the Place for the Water Suite. So yes, they are still liable the same way that if you have a company and you were committing fraud or any of these fraudulent acts, whatever that be, you can still be sued in civil court and criminal potentially, depending on the nature of the fraud, obviously. But those members are still liable, obviously, with that company. Yes.
Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the bringer on page 6. Online, through that whole paragraph, starting on line 8, it says that these rights of members may be materially differ materially. And then further down on line 15, or 14 and 15, it says the organization may define, reduce, or eliminate fiduciary duties. And I'm wondering what that language means.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if you look at that, starting in line 8, the rights of members in a decentralized autonomous organization may differ materially from the rights of members of other limited liability companies. That's something that is set forth in the operating agreement based upon the agreement between the shares or whoever is trying to incorporate that smart contract in Wyoming. So that's something that is negotiated between the folks who are actually doing the filing.
Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around portions of this, how this interacts with series LLCs when that all got set up a few years ago through both bodies on the blockchain, and how the interaction with all of those series, which could be hundreds of LLCs in the series, how that might interplay that way.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually going to defer that one to the good big city lawyer from the capital city to answer that one, because I believe he was actually the sponsor of that specific bill.
Representative Olson. Well, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess to back up a little bit, this is a supplement. The decentralized autonomous organization limited liability company is a supplement to existing LLC law. So what that means is they don't have to exist separate and apart from your whatever you may already form under existing law. So they could exist in tandem. You could have a series. I don't think that this legislation would prohibit you from having a series LLC that is algorithmically managed. So you could have a single LLC. You could have a close LLC. You could have a low profit LLC. You could have a series LLC, any type of LLC except for is it member managed? Member managed. So that's the only limitation. Chairman Greer.
The confusion is just oozing. I can feel it. Mr. Chairman. Okay, so folks, I did serve on this committee, and I think I was a big anchor on this committee all summer long. This actually is a very good piece of legislation. And I'll do my best to explain it because I argued and fought and took me forever this summer to get my mind around it. My number one concern was I did not want to in any way, shape, or form have us affect the sanctity of our current LLC laws. That's why this is a supplement. Okay. Now, to understand this, it's difficult for me, so I'll do my best. But really what we have are a group of people who come together and they'll form an LLC, okay, underneath this. And what they do is they write code. So it's out there on the World Wide Web, right? On the line. And they're writing code and they're adding to it. And each time they're doing that, they're setting up, and it's a series of contracts that they understand, okay? The smart contracts and these algorithms that they use that help divide their ownership. So if I log on and I'm working on this project for some, I don't know what it could be for, but some application for banking, I don't know. I think very simple terms. And I come in and I add to it and I write lines of code to it. And I'm a member of this LLC. And it will recognize my contribution, which becomes part of my capital. And it's relatively fluid. So in the end, does this code result in an end product? Sometimes it does. Sometimes it results in an end product that is extremely valuable. Sometimes it results in an end product that goes out and it's a free app that you use on your phone to, tell you the difference between the peso and the dollar. I have one on my phone right now. It's free, so it doesn't add anything. This is just a mechanism for these folks that do this, okay, in a world that I really don't live in or understand, but to be able to form and operate in a formal business entity. That's what it does. Why does it have the components like no fiduciary duties? Because it is truly member managed almost to the form of true democracy with respect to the majority rules. Versus when we think of an LLC, or at least I do, you have the manager or the one person who is the CEO making the decisions. In this case, everything's done by the group. And it is very fluid, it is very quick moving, and the demand for this is amazing. Just absolutely amazing. I see on this with the protections that went through this bill, and I'm sure the good sponsor will walk through those protections for us, that there's nothing to be afraid of here. It is a great tool and there is a demand out there for it. So vote aye.
Chairman Olson. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a question here, and hopefully it's a softball, but to follow up on the comments from the good chairman of Minerals, it is true right now that if I wanted to, because it is a supplement, without this bill, if I wanted to use a smart contract to be my operating agreement, I could do that right now. So there's not a prohibition on having an algorithmically designed and managed smart contract right now. So I think if that's true, which it is, I think that's important to note too, because you're not adopting a radical change to your limited liability law because you can already do this. Instead, the way that I see it is what we're doing is actually making it easier for consumers to form these without attorneys. And I say that as an attorney. 3 years ago, I was receiving phone calls asking if this is something that we could design. And the cost and the time for an attorney to try to put these together is a lot pricier than a coder. So that's kind of actually how I would distill it down, is that we're not putting something into law that you can't already do. What we're actually doing is making it easier for coders to enter this sphere in designing the operating agreement that works for them, as opposed to hiring out a lawyer who doubles in coding or farms out work with a coder, and the fees just get really exorbitant. And right now I don't know what it is, but anecdotally, I'd say in Wyoming, there's probably more LLCs formed without lawyers than there are with lawyers, because that was one of the geniuses behind the limited liability company, and why we created it back in the 70s, as opposed to the corporation, was that it's easier to form. It's easier to maintain, it's easier to manage, and you can move all the expensive legal process out of it. And one of the things about the blockchain world that I've come to know is they're not huge fans of the legal process. They're very independent. They want to be able to independently work and govern their businesses. And that's really all this is helping the coders develop their operating agreement without expensive legal fees. That's it.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Greer's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the favor. Whoa. Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I was a little slow getting up here behind the last speaker. I'm looking at page 5, lines 10 to 15 or so, and it has the definition of digital autonomous organization. And I'd like an example, if you would please, on at least one or two of those, perhaps looking forward to this kind of activity in Wyoming. What's the potential for Wyoming? But moreover, just an example, because the definition uses the digital autonomous organization as part of the definition. And then later in the bill, it talks in the miscellaneous area about the DAO, the digital autonomous organization, refers back to the definition on the subparagraph C there. I like this concept because it, to me, provides an opportunity for us to bring the digital economy more alive within Wyoming, and particularly in the area of business and flexibility and management of business entity documentation and legal aspects. But if you could help me with that, please, with that example of a digital autonomous organization. Thanks.
Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad actually the previous speaker got up slowly because it gave me a chance to ask a question. And I guess what I would like to know, because we've had first, the bringer started off with the word algorithm, which is kind of reminds me of grad school and was kind of creepy. And then we're talking about digital and coding and things which most of us here are not involved in. But I guess I wanted to give an example of what I wonder in my own business that isn't doing digital assets or coding, and find out if it fits in that too, because maybe that would fit more in other people's lives. So in my translation work, I work a lot with clients in Spain, and we always deal by email. And would it be possible for, supposing we wanted to go in together, they decided, why are we always contracting out with that person in Wyoming? Let's have a business. Could it be the kind of thing where we launched with a certain number of documents, and then, to be really simplistic about it, that as we're working on documents and in track change, we could have the algorithm decide how much we all got paid by how much we contributed through the track changes thing, and that would just flow the revenues out that way. So I just bring that up because that's not something that has to do with coding or digital assets. And would it work for that too?
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to the good Madam Chairwoman and the highly skilled linguist, yes, you absolutely could. That is an applicable situation where this kind of entity, this kind of technology absolutely could apply for sure. And to the good gentleman from the capital city, the benefit is similar to that of the Wyoming Limited Liability Corporation Act that we enacted in the 1970s and what that did for Wyoming. There is a demand, considerable demand right now, that is only going to grow in the coming years and decades for companies to have this kind of ability. We've seen the proliferation of some of these types of companies to have these types of abilities, and that demand is only going to go up. So this is about us saying, hey, we're open for business. We're business friendly. And this is just, I would argue, the 21st century version of saying, hey, we're willing to work with some of these companies who want to do business. Thank you.
Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And to that a little bit, and I might have missed it, but you know, my, you know, when I look at a bill is, you know, what problem are we trying to solve and how are we going to solve it? And what benefit are we going to have to the state of Wyoming? So let's just assume we attract these businesses under this name. Explain to me how that, and I'm sure there's good reasons because I've had that told to me, but how is this going to help us at the state of Wyoming move forward? What benefit are we going to get? Are we going to get businesses that then are going to produce income in communities? Are these all going to be external businesses that just reside in the state and we never see any dollars out of them? So tell us the where we'll see the benefits to the state of Wyoming out of this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it's all the above. Some of these people are just looking for a place to be domiciled and have limited liability protection. Absolutely, that will be some of them. Some of them absolutely will be businesses who will be here in Wyoming, who will have a presence in Wyoming and have employees in Wyoming. So I would say it's all the above. And the benefit is, I think we were very smart. This institution that we're serving in right now was very smart to set up those limited liability Corporation Act back in the 70s. We kind of saw what was coming around the curve and we saw the gap. At the time, there was no way, no convenient, easy, time-effective way to incorporate. The processes that were on the books then were cumbersome. They took a while to do. And it was us being proactive and saying, hey, we've got an idea here that's business friendly, that is convenient for big businesses and small alike. And that's ultimately the same kind of attitude with this bill, saying we're kind of looking around the curve here and we're seeing what's coming and seeing that there's a lot of companies right now, and that number is only going to grow exponentially in the years and decades to come, who want to use these types of platforms. Throughout the select committee testimony, all through the last interim, there are multiple companies who came forward and said, this is the exact type of thing that we're looking for, that will really enable us to conduct our business in the way that we best see fit, be the most efficient and effective company we can be. So this wasn't an idea that was just kind of dreamt up like, well, this is kind of theoretical. It would be really cool to do this. This was based on companies who said, hey, this is exactly the kind of thing that we really, really want. These are legitimate companies with legitimate employees and who have a lot to offer. So that's kind of to the good majority floor leader. It's us looking forward into the future and saying, for basically no cost, for us, just the cost is us talking about this bill, we can set something up that is going to be a big deal in the years and decades to come. So I would say that's the benefit for Wyoming.
Chairman Olson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to be really honest with the body. I'm not going to stand up here and oversell the bill to you and lead you to believe that if you pass this bill, you're going to have a flood of new companies in Wyoming, because that's just, I don't think that's going to happen. But the benefit, I'm going to go back to the benefit of who is creating the contract or who is creating the operating agreement. To me, that's what this bill really does. And that's a benefit to your constituents, to your consumers. And it lays a foundation to the future of something that we've mentioned a few times, but we haven't talked a lot about: smart contracts. And so again, under existing law, you can already form a limited liability company, and you can write your operating agreement in code. You can do that. Nothing prohibits you from doing that. What this bill does is pave a path forward for that makes it very clear what are all the rules when you do that, when you do draft it in code, and wraps some sideboards around that. And what it does is, I think it make for an industry that's growing, and it's just, I'm not talking about, I shouldn't say industry because I'm not talking about the blockchain industry, for generations of people that are entering the workforce that view the world that they work in much different than the world that we used to work in. The work day, whether they're part of a corporation or they're independent, and I think we're dealing with new generations of how they deal with and think of a corporate world. And it really comes down to one word: decentralization or independence. And I really think what what you're going to see in the future, like you've seen with LLCs, again, LLCs are not really formed by lawyers. They're formed by people that just go online and they form a company and they want to be independent. And that's what we're talking about now, is in a coding world where coders can simply design their company without the lawyer. I really think that's the benefit, and laying the foundation for smart contracts. And to the good chairman of Labor and Health's question about her company, this doesn't have to be a digital company. Any company, you could sell sugar, you could sell candy, you could have cattle. Any company in the world can have a company like this. And where the real benefit starts to come is when you have smart contracts in multiple companies that are interacting with each other, or your members are interacting, they are smart contracts and they are interacting with each other. And, I think that in the transactional world of law, and probably within the next decade, maybe a little more than that, I think you're going to have a pretty big shift in the use of smart contracts in place of lawyers, because smart contracts can perform a lot of the functions that a lawyer can perform for your constituents at almost none of the cost. And just think of some examples, like I go on to LegalZoom to purchase my will because I can't afford the expense of a lawyer. Whether that's good or bad, I have my own opinion, but what I need someone to review my lease agreement, and I'm not a commercial lease. I'm just leasing, a residential place. I don't have the money to pay a lawyer to review it. So in the world of smart contracts, the idea is that all of the checks and balances that might exist in a document can occur algorithmically faster and cheaper than a lawyer. And I think that's really what the heart of it is that, and that's why the business industry is so interested in it, because they can put in all the conditions into the code that they want to make sure that when there's an agreement that's being negotiated, that all the terms are in the code. And they don't need to pay a lawyer to negotiate that. Instead, it's in the code and it's there. And so the bottom lines are already designed. I think is that revenue to the state of Wyoming. I'm not going to say that it's, again, we're going to form so many LLCs that your Secretary of State's office revenue is going to go through the roof. That's not what this is. I think it's more of a consumer-oriented benefit for the state of Wyoming, and that's how I would sell it, at least.
Representative Ottman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for a point of clarification, I know that this committee has worked really, really hard on producing these documents and also this ideal, and their explanations are good, but just to verify for me, this is only the organization for the organization of the entity that can become a part of this. This doesn't guarantee that through the state of Wyoming, the Secretary of State's office, because I don't believe that determination has been made yet that we can, with our current equipment and the way that the Secretary of State's office functions, that this would automatically be available, or that we would be able. So I just want to verify that this is totally separate or reasonably. Thank you.
Sensing you're ready to vote. Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Greer's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the favorable recommendation on Senate File 38, please say aye. Those opposed say no. Senate File 38 has passed committee of the whole. The next file for our consideration is Senate File 112. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
Senate File 112, sponsored by Senator Landon. Insurance discount for accident prevention training, an act relating to motor vehicle insurance. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, corporations, elections, and political subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 112 engrossed, insurance discount for accident prevention training. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Blackburn, Clausen, Clifford, Duncan, Air, Hunt, McGuire, Roscoe, Swanitzer. Representative Swanitzer, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the committee of the whole rise to report it do so. The recommendation that Senate File 112 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments. And I return over explanation of the bill to the good Vice Chairman of Transportation.
Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So picture this, if you will. Sitting in the office, beautiful day, phone rings, a constituent is on the line. And the issue is that where he used to live, he could get a senior driver discount for his automobile insurance. And when he moved to Wyoming, his company won't offer it because the classes have to be offered in person. And I said something to the effect of, what? So my next call was immediately to my senator, who also happens to chair the committee that handles these items. Good tip there. So anyway, digging into it, called the division that handles insurance and explained the situation. And they said something to the effect of, what? So started digging into these statutes and they found it. And sure enough, there's a statute that says that if a company wants to offer a discount to its clients over 55 years of age, that they have to offer a class and it has to be in person in a classroom or field driving instruction for a minimum number of hours. So when asked further, they said, we don't care. That's between the client and the insurance company. So if you want to get rid of that, that's fine. So then the next call was to the department that handles our transportation safety. And they said something to the effect of, what? And so digging in and showing it to them, they said, we don't care. That's between the insurance company and the constituent. So where we are is with a bill that repeals this little paragraph. And I would say it's one of those rare times where the constituent, the insurance company, the department that regulates that insurance company, and the department that regulates our transportation safety are all in agreement to repeal this little paragraph. And I'm not using it a prop. I just was looking at that myself. I think the final benefit, and this, you should keep this in mind, is that if we get rid of that portion of the green books that's going to be printed, that helps with our carbon footprint and being conscientious and trying to do our little part to reduce. So I would ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Zwanitzer's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the favorable recommendation on Senate File 112, please say aye. All those opposed say no. Senate File 112 is passed committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand on recess until 2 p.m.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. We are in recess until 2 p.m. Oh, committee announcements. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee number 8, Transportation, will meet in about 15 minutes to consider interim topics.
Chairman Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet tomorrow morning with our counterparts down the hall to discuss interim topics and dates. We'll meet in room W06 at 8 a.m.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There will be a full House caucus starting at 6 o'clock where we will discuss how to disperse crab.
Chairman Harshman.
Mr. Chairman, House Revenue Committee number 3 will meet here at noon recess with our Senate counterparts to discuss interim topics in underground extension room 6.
Chairman Greer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your House Conference Committee will meet with a like committee from the Senate on House Bill 22, just generally around 1:30, if we're all around there, and in one of the rooms that's available on the west end of the first floor of the Capitol.
Vice Chairman Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm hoping that the conference committee for Senate File 87 hopefully will meet here anytime here soon over the lunch hour. 12:30.
And do you have a location for that?
Room 113.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Chairman Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 5, agricultural, will meet upon adjournment with the Senate for our interim topics. And hopefully it'll be fairly short so we don't miss crab.
All right. The House is in recess until 2 p.m.